they're called trigger warnings on college campuses, a cue to students that something controversial, potentially uncomfortable or upsetting, is about to be brought up in class or by a guest speaker. Critics believe they fuel a culture of political correctness and don't belong in an academic environment.
According to research by the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, called FIRE, hundreds of colleges around this country have policies encouraging students to report any offensive speech or other crime think they overhear from their classmates.
The trend has really changed just in the last 2 or 3 years. That's what a lot of people don't seem to understand.
If it's not a him and if it's not a her, what is it? Dr. Jordan Peterson is a professor at the University of Toronto.
And we have to be unbelievably careful about infringing upon that, because we're infringing upon the process by which we keep chaos and order balanced.
What isn't a microaggression now, especially on today's campuses?
Everything's a microaggression. This makes me want to vomit. I mean, like, liberals don't think we should be allowed to say anything because everything can be a microaggression.
Once such thought crime is reported, squads with Orwellian names like Bias Incident Response Team swoop in and impose all manner of penalties. These range from sensitivity training to suspension.
I think that we're seeing this played out. We're seeing this played out in society, and I think it's absolutely horrifying. So on October 18th, the university mentioned to me in another warning letter that if personal pronouns are being used, the refusal to use the personal pronoun that is an expression of the person's gender identity can constitute discrimination. So now, you see what's happened is that I haven't refused to use someone's gender-neutral pronouns. I said that I would refuse. But the university's legal department decided that all that was sufficient for them to distance themselves from me and to engage in disciplinary activity.
Texas could be giving up future Super Bowls. That's if lawmakers agree to a controversial bill.
It requires men to use the men's room and women to use the women's room. Whoa, radical stuff, huh?
And huge music stars canceling shows in North Carolina last year.
Isn't it also the role of a society to make those people feel included and to have inclusiveness?
No, it's not the role of society to make people feel included. That's not the role of society. The role of society is to maintain a modicum of peace between people. It's not the role of society to make people feel comfortable.
In a papal first, Pope Francis sends a video message to tens of thousands of fans during Sunday's Super Bowl.
Pope Francis calling out hypocritical Catholics, saying it would be better to be an atheist. Not kidding. According to reports, the Pope making those comments during a private mass. The transcript on Radio Vatican.
What's it say about our country at this moment?
It says that we are living in the most unpredictable times of all time.
The Holy Father said he hoped the Super Bowl would provide a sign of peace, friendship, and solidarity for the world. Francis is an avid sports fan who often speaks of how sports can bring about social change.
Let's move from the politics to the science, because this policy has implications that go far beyond bathrooms and locker rooms. The core question is what constitutes male and female.
I would say a legal doctrine is something like a virus, and it has a life.
That's not what we think.
If you let it go into a living system, it propagates and it has effects, and the effects are a consequence of the philosophy that's embedded inside the law.
And the implication of these guidelines that Obama put in place is that a man is someone who says he's a man, and a woman is someone who says she's a woman. You get to decide your gender. There's no biological anchor to sex anymore.
And so then I had to think about, well, why do we in fact use pronouns? And we use them in part for the same reason that we use other categories, and that's to simplify the world for functional purposes, roughly speaking. But then I was thinking, well, is the use of he and she a mark of respect? And the answer to that is, well, no, it's not a mark of respect. It can't be a mark of what you call 4 billion people can't be a mark of respect, right? It's a mark of basic categorization.
Well, let me take you back 3 sentences. When you said gender identity is determined by the person who possesses it. That's almost exactly what you said.
Correct.
And I'm saying there are massive implications of this that everyone is either too dumb or too embarrassed to explore, but let's do so now.
But this is a whole different thing. This builds in a philosophy of identity. And one of the things it builds in, for example, is the claim that identity is only subjectively defined. And that's built right in. It says that your identity is whatever you think it is. Well, let me tell you, as a practicing psychologist, that's absolute rubbish.
If your sex is what you say it is, then what prevents me from playing on a women's field hockey team? What prevents me from getting convicted of a felony and demanding to go to a women's prison? And it's a real question.
It's not a real question.
Why is it not a real question?
It's not a real question because it is pretty absurd, and there are no other examples.
Because why?
Because there are no examples of this. What do
you mean?
I'm sorry, but there are no examples.
I think that we're crossing a dangerous line.
Like if I turned to you, Tom, and said, I think you look really great tonight, that's a microaggression because there might be someone at this table who doesn't feel like they look great tonight. Or if you do something really cool and I say, congrats, I'm going to drink to that. That could be a microaggression because it's not being sensitive to someone at the table who could have a drinking problem.
Yes.
These college kids are such wussies.
Students were even advised to not use the word American because it suggested the United States was the only country in the Americas.
I truly believe that these made-up pronouns, of which there are many, dozens in fact, and there's no consensus on them.
Is there science behind this? Because I know that I'm often getting... I want you to name a single scientist, just one, who says you can determine your own sex just by saying so. Can you name one scientist who says that?
I'd be happy to send you many after...
a scientist who said you can determine your own sex. An actual scientist, like someone who went to college.
Listen,
are you serious?
You clearly have some issues around this.
It's not an issue at all. I have questions that you can't answer.
Because if you can define your identity subjectively any way you want, then there's absolutely no reason that you can't claim a non-human identity. And you may not know, but in the LGBT Rainbow Coalition, there is Q+, and the Q+ people include the otherkins who claim a non-human identity, and they're arguing in that Rainbow Coalition that they have the same right to their pronouns that everyone else does.
Science, and it is something
What's the science exactly? That you are what you say you are? Could I change my race too? And don't dodge that question. That's a real question.
No, you cannot.
Why? Why can't I change my race, but I can change my sex? What's the difference?
It is not about changing. It is not about changing.
But why isn't it?
This is about inherently who people are.
Really? What if I say I'm inherently of another race? Who are you to say I'm not?
I mean, again, you're getting into these silly hypotheticals.
It's not silly at all. 2 years ago, nobody thought you could change your own sex.
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that.
Do you not see that society might be evolving in a way that might be leaving you behind?
Well, I don't really think that's a real question. I think it's more like a cliche. It's a question that attempts to portray me as some kind of dinosaur. And I think society is changing in many ways, and some of them are positive and some of them aren't so positive. And I can tell you one thing that I'm very terrified of, and you can think about this. I think that the continual careless pushing of people by left-wing radicals is dangerously waking up the right wing. And so you can consider this a prophecy for me if you want. The inside the collective is a beast, and the beast uses its fists. And If you wake up the beast, then violence emerges. And I'm afraid that this continual pushing by radical left-wingers is going to wake up the beast.
Look, you want to go into this in this right-wing pseudoscience.
It's not right-wing at all.
It absolutely
It's pseudoscience, right? You name.
No,
I will give you $1,000 if you can find any scientist, like an actual biologist at an accredited American college, willing to come on this show and say, here's the science, here's the state of play of biology 2017, name your sex, and that's what it is. You can't.
And if we want to divide our society into armed camps of enmity, all we have to do is keep doing what we're doing. And I would recommend that we don't do this. I've studied authoritarianism for a very long time. I know what happens when things get out of control, and it can happen extraordinarily rapidly.
Taking you to the final frontier this morning.
Well, stunning space discovery revealed by NASA today.
We are one step closer to answering the age-old question.
The questions are we alone? Is there life on other planets?
It's big. This is NASA has hit the jackpot this time.
The discovery gives us a hint that finding a second Earth is not just a matter of if, but when.
What do you think is the broader impact? I mean, we live in this world where everyone, in a way, is treated very fragilely. Like, there's bubble wrap around them. Yeah. What happens when people are suppressing things, not to say they're right things, but suppressing some free thought?
It's hard to believe this is real. Bias response teams?
Not only is it real, it's really horrifyingly widespread.
Is freedom of speech is not just another principle. It's the mechanism by which we keep our psyches and our societies organized, and we have to be unbelievably careful about infringing upon that, because we're infringing upon the process by which we keep chaos and order balanced, you know. And if chaos and order go out of balance, then all hell breaks loose, and the situation is not good.